So here we go with the streaming wars segment for those that may be new to Retro Rogues. We do a streaming wars segment in addition to our pop culture segment, where we talk about news as far as the various streaming services, normally from a business aspect, but often from the aspect of how much is this going to cost me and you. So please, Eric, please tell me, is there anything interesting that you found for the streaming wars?
Yes, found a few articles, and they're mostly pretty short, but they give some interesting insight from some of the different contenders here. This is a Variety article that is dated January 14th, and it says, Amazon Studios execs on TV streaming wars. We're in a different business. This is kind of funny because if you recall, when we did our sort of recap of 2019, we decided to crown some winners and losers of the streaming wars from 2019. And you mentioned Amazon specifically as a winner, and I mentioned it as an honorable mention because of their because they have the IMDb, the free IMDb stuff, and I always like to promote the free stuff, and Amazon does that now. So, but this is some these are the suits. You can see them right there in the suits.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. Talking about the streaming wars. It says the streaming wars kick into high gear this year. But Amazon Studios believes it's in an entirely different category. As newcomers such as HBO Max and Peacock enter a crowded landscape recently joined by Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, Amazon execs told reporters on Tuesday at the Television Critic Association press tour that they're in a different world. It says, quote, we're in a different business model, unlike the pure play video SVOD, streaming video on demand players, said Amazon Studios Chief Operating Officer and co-TV head Albert Cheng. For us, it's about Amazon Prime customers, making sure we're delivering value, that we're looking at our content to drive subscriptions. We don't have to play as a substitute for a different type of service or compete in that way. So this is a spin article. That's what this is. This is a complete spin article where I think Amazon is trying to essentially, they're trying to curb expectations. Because they don't know how this is all going to pan out. It's funny that they would say this because this is really silly in the context of Apple Plus to say something like this. Because, oh yeah, like Apple Plus isn't in a similar situation to you guys, except you guys are actually more established than Apple Plus. Apple obviously is doing other things than strictly a streaming platform. So I just thought this article was kind of funny. Because you and I actually were saying that Amazon seemed like they did pretty well this last year, but yeah. I think what they're doing here is they're trying to lower expectations because they're concerned. This track doesn't make any sense. This track would be perfectly fine if the only players were Disney Plus and say Time Warner and a couple of these other like media companies, but Apple Plus is there. So for them to kind of say, well, we're in a different marketplace. Well, so is Apple. And they're in the middle of this. So I think It's a little bit of a spin article that's just meant to kind of curb expectations.
And it's interesting to me, too, because, Amazon, in my mind, when you look at Marvelous Miss Maisel, which has had season 3, which I talked about in the last episode, which was a great season. And then you turn around and you look at The Boys. The Boys was a great surprise. The Boys was a fantastic series that was on Amazon Prime. Amazon is doing some of the best shows, in my humble opinion, on any of these streaming platforms. I mean, Amazon's got some of the best stuff. That's why they were my winner of the year in the streaming wars. So it is weird to see an article where they're trying to spin stuff when I was the last episode talking about how in my mind they're the winner because they've got some of the best content. Besides it, also having shows like Justified. A lot of these great shows are a part of their Prime service. It's an older show. But it's just, they've got a lot of great content on there that's totally worth the money, especially if you buy enough from Amazon to want to save on the shipping.
I did want Orville Nation to get back to us, and they did mention from our previous segment about Seth MacFarlane that this is Seth's baby, referring to Orville. And we will have season 11, 12, 13 of the Orville. So, and he concludes by saying, don't be concerned, guys. So that's his take on our previous segment. And then we do have a comment for this segment, which is, how is this new world of streaming going to end up being an improvement over cable users? And actually, that's one of our big angles with our streaming wars coverage, right, Dave? Is
Yep,
how is it
exactly.
going to be any better than cable, or are we going right back to cable all over again? Is that where the streaming wars are going to lead? And again, it's funny what Amazon is putting out there. Kind of like I said, to me, this article is all about curbing expectations and keeping them low. That people are like, hey, Amazon's obviously going to be fine, because it is true. They do have a different business model than a lot of these other companies, these other media companies, because they're involved with all sorts of other things. But I do think it's funny because like we were praising Amazon the other day. You know what I mean? As far as their position in the streaming wars, I still think they're in a good position. But there are going to be a lot more competitors. And I think that they're wisely kind of realizing that they do have to kind of they do kind of have to curb expectations from their investors and things like that. That hey, even if we do become losers in the streaming wars, we still got plenty of other stuff going on for us, and we'll be fine. That's kind of the take I get from the article, is that even if we end up losing the streaming wars, we'll be fine. We will survive.
Yeah, and yet, like I said, it's like, they've got some of the best content, and up until this last year, they were winning a lot of awards for the content they have been producing. And like I said, for me, the big surprise was how great The Boys was, on Amazon. They've got a lot of great things in the pipeline. It's just weird to see them backpedaling when, in my mind, I see them as a standout winner, in terms of the content they have produced. So we'll see.
But they definitely don't have the deep content of Time Warner and NBC Universal. And that might be why they're putting that stuff out there, is because they realize they don't have the amount of content that they're going to be providing,
Right. Well, we'll see.
They aren't even in the same category when it comes to that. That's the same issue that Apple Plus has, actually. Apple Plus has very limited content. This is another article. This is from Benzinga Pro, I think is what it's called. So this is a quote from an executive. It says, Netflix, Amazon, best positioned in the streaming wars. We just said Amazon was just lowering expectations, right?
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of hot takes on the state of the streaming wars and things like that. That's why I like to talk about this stuff, because everybody has a position, and some of these positions are interesting. So it says Netflix and Amazon are the best positioned companies to take advantage of the movement towards streaming entertainment. This is Nomura Instant said in a new look at the industry. It says, while Netflix, the pioneering early giant in the space, while Netflix is the pioneering early giant in the space, and Amazon look best among the companies providing streaming services, Apple may have the most in question position in the new business. This is an analyst. His name is Mark Kelly, said, citing the high price and relatively small library of the computing giant Apple Plus's streaming service, which I think is a great weakness of Apple Plus right now. To succeed, streaming services need a mix of splashy new frontline content to lure customers in and try out the service, and then also need a long tail library to keep users engaged after consuming the initial hits, Kelly wrote in a note. Netflix and Amazon are the two companies that have both. And then he gets into Peacock and HBO. It says Peacock and HBO have good libraries. The new Peacock streaming service from Comcast Corporation, NBC, which will be unveiled this week and start streaming in April, will have a strong library with a large catalog of TV and movie hits, including The Office. AT&T's HBO also has decades of programming from its long-lasting cable network that give it a strong, diverse library, Kelly said. Apple Plus and Walt Disney Company's Disney Plus streaming services, on the other hand, have had the flashy, reeled-in content. Disney, for example, has gotten headlines and social media traction from Baby Yoda in his new Mandalorian show, while Apple Plus made a splash last year with some star-studded new exclusive shows like The Morning Show, Jennifer Aniston, and Reese Witherspoon. By the way, I would argue that's just not true. The Morning Show, yes, it got a Golden Globe or nomination at least or whatever, but it doesn't have nearly the buzz of, say, The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I don't see anyone, in all honesty, I don't see anyone talking about the Apple Plus shows. The only time I ever hear anyone talking about it, just in general conversation, people are still perplexed by that C show where everybody's blind. People are just like, I don't know, that just seems weird. I'm not, and I haven't heard anyone really talking about the morning show either. Even though I keep hearing the news media talking about the morning show, I'm not hearing anybody talk about it.
Yeah, either. Me either. The main coverage I heard about it is because of the Golden Globe nomination. Which I don't know if they won or not. I didn't follow that one. So it says, but both the depth of both networks offerings beyond the headline grabbers may not be as strong as that of Netflix or Amazon. Bottom line, a positive NFLX, a path for HBO Max and Peacock, lukewarm for AAPL, Kelly wrote. So it talks about their shares and things like that. So this particular analyst is basically saying that he feels that because of their catalog, Netflix and Amazon are actually in a very good position, and HBO and Peacock will be in a very good position, and Apple and Disney perhaps not, which is kind of an interesting thing to say about Disney. But, you know, as far as content goes, Netflix is going to be losing lots of their content.
Yeah.
They produce a lot of content, but as far as the legacy content, they're going to lose a lot of it. The deals are expiring with Disney. The deals are expiring with other networks. Everybody's trying to get their IP back because everybody's going to have their own streaming service now. So everybody's trying to get their IP back, and that is going to hit Netflix. Netflix is going to have to rely even more on their new content. And we've talked about this. That's putting Netflix into major debt. I mean, Netflix has a huge revenue stream because of their huge subscription base, but they are going into debt because they're trying to produce so much content. And they're producing content at a high level with big name stars and things like that. And that means big budgets and spending a ton of money. So it's kind of interesting because I think he's right in this article. He basically says you have to have the right combination of something fun, new, trendy that's going to get attention, but then you also have to have a massive catalog behind you to keep people there. That's what Netflix has had in the past. But the question is, will Netflix still have that because all these other streaming companies and all these other studios are taking content away that used to be on Netflix? And so then again, they have to rely more and more on their original new content.
And it's interesting too because it's like with Netflix specifically, I think it's like, well, you know, as they're losing they're going to call it their legacy brands or legacy shows they had that they've been able to lean on, things like Friends and The Office. As they're losing that content, for example, Lost in Space Season 2, just came out. And I talked about how much I enjoyed Lost in Space Season 1, and I was looking forward to watching some of Lost in Space Season 2. I'm not seeing anyone talk about Lost in Space Season 2. And that's kind of...
you did.
I mean, I did. I mean, beyond me, I'm not seeing anyone else talk about it. And that's what I'm saying. That's the problem. It's like, I'm on that verge of just getting rid of Netflix, and then here's Lost in Space Season 2. Okay, well, I'll stick around and watch Lost in Space Season 2. What have you got past that, though? That's the issue. It's like, is Ozark, Season 3 or whatever getting ready to come out? Like, because that's where they're at. I watched The Irishman. It was okay. I mean, I feel like I'd already kind of seen this movie when I watched the Jack Nicholson Hoffa movie or whatever. So I don't know.
I started watching The Irishman, and I was looking forward to it because I'm a big Joe Pesci fan, and this is the return of Joe Pesci, right? And I love that team. Casino is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Casino. I own that movie. I watch it all the time, and for different reasons because there's so much in that movie. And I started watching The Irishman, and I think I got within 5 minutes. And I said, you know what? I'm going to watch something else right now. It just wasn't drawing me. And I do plan to watch it, because I want to watch it all the way through. I'm going to force myself, even if I don't like it at some point. But I've had that experience with a lot of Netflix stuff.
That's a great. Go ahead.
I've just had that experience with a lot of Netflix stuff. Like I'll be sitting there, and I'll be trying to find something on Netflix. Like I need to watch The Witcher. In fact, I think that might be something we should do on a future show. Is The Witcher? I want to watch it, but a lot of times the stuff just doesn't grab me right away. And the only reason I even knew about The Witcher is because I've heard other people talking about it. And I have Netflix, but I'm not on that platform all that much. My kids are my kids are definitely on it way more than I am. And so, I don't know. I think I think Netflix basically their feeling is because their subscription base is so much larger than anybody else's, they don't need to advertise, they don't need to promote anything. It, they just think that people are just going to find the content on their platform because they think that people are on their platform all the time. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that used to be the case because there was nobody else to go to. When there was nobody else to go to, yeah, people just hung out on Netflix and would search. And this, back in the early days of Netflix, there weren't that many good movies, and people would just sit there searching, trying to find something to watch because there was no alternative. Now that I can go to Disney Plus, now that I can go to other platforms, I can go to Tubi, I could go to Amazon, even though I don't have Amazon Prime, and I can watch IMDb movies for free. I can go to Crackle, I can go to all sorts of other platforms. I don't have to sit on Netflix all day trying to find something that I like.
Well, so it's like, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, their update to their interface, I feel like actually obscures their content. It makes it even harder. Have you noticed how, like, when you click over it, like it mouses over and it opens up like a big window and it gives you all the information and the Rotten Tomatoes rating and all this other stuff, but it covers up everything that's right next to it. And it's like, you can't, I feel like their updates, their interface is actually hurting them because they're actually hiding their content even more. And that's kind of the issue. It's like, I don't know. We'll have to see. We're going to see how the streaming wars unfolds. But I feel like that a lot of the original movies that Netflix has been doing for my wife and I, we watched Marriage Story. Marriage Story was good. A bit of a downer, obviously, because it's about a family getting divorced. A lot of crying and nonsense. But it was a well put together film, for what it was. And we watched Unbelievable, I think, actually on Netflix. And Unbelievable was really great. So Netflix does have a lot of really great content. But it's one of those things that just, for example, I don't hear anyone talking about Unbelievable. We only watched Unbelievable because Caitlin Dever got a nomination on the Golden Globes. And we went, what is that? Because we liked her in Booksmart. And I really enjoyed her.
I think we lost the stream for a second, Dave, because you were talking about what Netflix has or doesn't have, and then it kind of went out. But
I was just talking about I was backing up what you were saying about the fact that they just don't do. In my mind, they're not doing a very good job of making sure people are aware of the great content that is even on Netflix. Yeah. So, and I was talking about Unbelievable, which is a show I mentioned earlier, which is a show that Michael Chabon was tying it back into Picard. It's one of his shows that he actually has worked in a producerial capacity on. And I think he actually wrote one or two of the episodes. Unbelievable is a great show. But the only reason we know about it is because they got a Golden Globe nomination. We saw Caitlin Dever was nominated, and we liked her in Booksmart, and which Booksmart was a great film. And then I, in the process of rewatching Justified, and she was great in Justified. And I was like, I wonder what the Unbelievable show is. And then my wife went and found it on Netflix and went, hey, let's watch this and check it out. And it's got like Toni Collette. It's got like a great cast. It's all based off of true events. And it's a really great show. Very well written, greatly acted. It's really, really good. And I'm just shocked because it's like I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about Unbelievable beyond the fact that it received a nomination on the Golden Globes. And it's a great show. And that's a Netflix show. And it's just one of those things. That's the thing. They've got lots of great content on there, but I'm not sure people are finding it or discovering it. Now, they may have the stats that prove that that's not true. But because, there's no transparency, we as, commenting from the outside as commenters, as reviewers, we don't really see that. So it's hard to know if, internally Netflix is winning the war. But from the outside looking in, it just looks like they've got an awful lot of great content that I just don't see a lot of people talking about.
Well, a great example of that is the review that we did a while back of Living with Yourself. And I think we were questioning even going forward with that because we were like, is anybody going to really care, regardless of what we think or anything like that? Because the show just wasn't getting the buzz that I think was expected, especially with Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's a pretty hot actor. And it was kind of crazy the lack of interest there seemed to be in that show, which I thought was very creative. I think our big take was it was like a really cool long Twilight Zone episode,
Yeah.
It was a neat premise, and it was basically like a mini series. It was only a few episodes. I think 6 or 8, and they were half-hour episodes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big time commitment either. And I only heard about it because you had watched it and said, "Well, I want to check this out." Otherwise, I wouldn't have heard of it.
Yeah.
So there's a problem there, and like I said, I think the numbers can be deceiving because right now Netflix is still in a dominant position because they have so many more subscribers than any other service. I think that's going to change. Over time, that's going to change. I think there are people that are going to dump Netflix because they're going to be interested in whatever's flashy or new on these other services that are going to be heavily promoted, as opposed to the Netflix stuff, which isn't.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not heavily promoted. That they rely on their own internal platform, which I think does a bad job of promoting new content, I think, quite frankly. So I have one last article here. And this kind of gets into what we've talked about quite a bit. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. And it says the Discovery CEO predicts few platforms will survive the streaming wars, which is something we've talked about since the beginning. This article was dated January 8th. So the Discovery CEO basically was talking to his shareholders, and his name is David Zaslav. He says that the company has exceeded its goal of $3 billion in annual free cash flow ahead of schedule, and will roll out HDTV in 12 new markets. And HDTV, I think, has been doing pretty well as far as a platform, because what they do is they focus on that sort of reality TV, except it's actual more like reality TV. It's like little mini documentaries of like house flipping and things like that, and not so much of like the Kim Kardashian kind of drama, fake reality TV, So.
Yeah.
Discovery President and CEO David Zaslav told an investor conference Wednesday that a bigger company would have to acquire the company if it wanted to beef up its streaming content offering with Discovery programming, as the non-scripted lifestyle content giant is well positioned to go it alone. So in other words, he's saying that I guess they're at a crossroads, I think is what he's trying to say, is that if they want to be any bigger than they already are, they're probably going to have to be acquired by someone. But he's also saying we don't have to do that. We're in a good enough position where we don't have to be acquired by a bigger company. But if we want to expand, that's pretty much what we're going to have to do. So speaking at the City 22 Global TMT West Conference in Las Vegas in a session which was webcast, he was also asked about the future of consolidation and the streaming wars, predicting that there would be only 2 or 3 streaming war survivors, while other services would likely tip over. But while most entertainment giants fight over the same limited scripted content pie, Discovery can focus on the much less crowded non-scripted part of the market, he reiterated. So what he's trying to say is that Discovery is in a unique position because they do create new content. And that's their bread and butter, is they create new content, but they have a completely different way of creating their content. They go more with this sort of, documentary style, reality TV, which is much cheaper to produce. And he feels that they're in a much better position than a lot of these other streaming services and networks right now that are all competing over big stars and scripted content and things like that.
And yet that was your argument for why, YouTube is in a unique position as well, except the difference is YouTube is able to get the same kind of content, but they're not even paying for the people that are producing it.
Right.
So this goes to bolster the argument for YouTube from the last episode.
So the big question that of course, for his investors, it says, does Discovery need to become part of a bigger media company amid the streaming wars? Zaslav said, there is a very good argument that we are fine, adding, we couldn't be much bigger in terms of non-scripted content. But at the same time, every one of those bigger players doesn't have enough content. Every one of them has come to us and said, you have a huge library in women, a huge library in family. Your content library itself is bigger than Netflix as a whole. We need more bulk. We need more great characters. So we've had discussions about doing things with others. Zaslav added, but in the end, we came to the conclusion that we may have enough to go ourselves. And if we are going to go with someone else, they really need to buy us. Because if we gave our content to somebody else to fill out one of the other big players, then we would be giving away really the future of our company. Discovery executives recently started saying that the TV giant would launch a U.S. streaming service aggregating all its programming. Zaslav said Wednesday that we are looking hard at that. He later added that Discovery cannot be a growth business by just staying on the existing platforms in the U.S., given that there are fans of the firm's brands who are not pay TV subscribers. Says we have hundreds of thousands of hours that people grew up on. He had said in 2019, we are looking now at whether we should just aggregate if we should just aggregate all of our content in the U.S. and have something that looks very different. In having something that looks very different is very deep, has great personalities, great brands to curate through. So it's an interesting take. First of all, he's obviously saying that he doesn't think very many of these streaming platforms will survive, but he's mentioning the unique position that Discovery is in because they have a huge amount of content and because they produce their content in a different way than most of these other players. So, getting back to this question we had earlier, how is the new world of streaming going to end up being an improvement over cable users? I don't know, but I will say that it's going to either go that way, it's going to become cable all over again, or just as this CEO says, you're going to wind up with like 2 or 3 of these streaming services because the other ones are all going to go away. It's going to be one or the other. That's the way I look at it.
It's weird because if we only end up with 2 or 3 streaming services at the end, it's almost like going back actually to the old network system where there were 3 major networks and there was a couple of little outliers and that was pretty much it. And they were in a position to, be kingmakers and, pick what people are going to watch and program for the majority of viewers just because they controlled all the access.
Yeah, well, that's actually what he just said. He's saying like 3. It would be like the big 3 all over again. He didn't come to that conclusion, but he that's basically what he said because he's saying that he thinks like basically like 3 of these platforms will probably make it when it's all said and done. So we'll be literally back to the big 3 networks all over again, depending on what those networks are. But that's the position that he's kind of predicting there. While also mentioning that his own company is in a very unique position because of the way they make their content.
Right.